Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Straits Times Reset 2021 webinar series. Today's topic is on digitalization and cybersecurity. COVID-19 is said to be a gift to cyber crooks. While battling the virus, people let their guard down in cyberspace. From a rise in ransomware attack to WhatsApp hijacking and QR code scams, how can we double down on our defenses to keep both the digital and physical viruses at bay? What can we learn from the challenges presented by this pandemic and reset our systems, our processes, and mental readiness for 2021 and beyond? Today, we have our distinguished panel members in joining us at our discussion to provide some thoughts and actions for us today. We have from the left to the right, Associate Prof. Stephen Wong, Program Director of Singapore Institute of Technology. And on his left is Mr. Benjamin Ang, Senior Fellow, Cyber and Homeland Defense at the Center of Excellence for National Security. Next to him is Associate Prof. Stephen Wong, next to him is Associate Prof. Chang Ee-Chien, School of Computing at the National University of Singapore. And last and not least, we have Mr. David Koh, Commissioner of Cybersecurity, Chief Executive of the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, joining us today. Before we begin, I would like our panel members to talk a little bit for about 2 to 3 minutes about their thoughts on the topic to set the tone of the discussion. So could we have maybe David to start the presentation?
Thanks so much, Irene. I think first of all, thank you for having all of us here. The webinar, firstly, I would say is an excellent, pertinent topic. If you think about it, the world has changed in the last 12 months. Not just from a medical or economic perspective, but clearly from a digitalization perspective. Singapore has pivoted and we are now spending so much of our time, how we live, work and play online. This means that digitalization has accelerated. I choose the word accelerated because I think digitalization was already taking place, but COVID has forced the degree to which this has happened into a very compressed time frame. Some people have argued that 3 to 5 years worth of digitalization has taken place in the last couple of months. We see it ourselves. We use Trace Together, we use Safe Entry wherever we go. What this means is our dependence now on the digital infrastructure, on ICT, our smartphones, computers has gone up tremendously. It also means that the cyber attack surface, the angles at which the bad guys, the malicious actors, the crooks can attack us has gone up tremendously as well. As what Irene said, we see many themes, phishing emails coming our way. Many of them are about COVID-19. I fully expect that the crooks will now pivot and they'll be talking about vaccines. These are things which are of great interest to us, which we are concerned about. So we then are tempted to click on it. QR code scams, WhatsApp hijacking, DDoS attacks. These are just examples. From CSA's perspective, we've seen 3,600 phishing URLs. These are the links that we click on the internet, spoofing, scamming Singapore companies and entities as examples. This is a significant increase from previous years. Ransomware has also gone up significantly. CSA has seen 60 cases in the last 9 months. This is a 75% increase compared to the previous year. What then can we do? Government on one hand is trying its best address some of these challenges, but I would say that cyber is not something which the government or CSA can deal by itself. It is something which is a collective responsibility. Everyone has to play their part and play their part well. Businesses, for example, have gone up tremendously online. The footprint, exposure online has gone up tremendously. Now when we talk about the post-COVID era, we need to ask ourselves, has our risk profile changed? And I would argue that it probably has. We are now taking much greater risks because we had no choice. We had to go online, we had to be digital. Going forward, we have to ask ourselves whether we need to perhaps recalibrate our risk profiles and ask ourselves whether some of the things that we had to do as a matter of course, as a matter of survival, economic survival, perhaps now we can trail back. Similarly, from an individual's perspective, we are now working from home. We used to depend on the office IT environment, office lockdown computers. Now that we are using our home environment, again, the environment has changed, the cybersecurity posture has changed, cyber hygiene things which we took for granted because the office IT department was doing it, now has also changed. But it's not just ourselves as individuals, but also our family members, the older members, the seniors in our family, or our children. They are similarly affected. So I think we need to be aware of these realities in terms of the digital domain, and then see how all of us can play our part. As I put it, cybersecurity is a team sport. We're all part of the same team. The bad guys are out there. We need to work together on this. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So, Ee-Chien, would you like to talk about what are some of your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, okay, thank you, Irene. So this COVID thing is really very destructive. Okay, he made us to work from home, and he pushed the company to develop new application, develop new workflow. And many newly developed software and applications, they are not very well tested and have a lot of security bugs. One good example is Zoom. Like we see at Zoom, when it initially launched, there are so many security loopholes. And from an individual point of view, because there is a change of workflow, it's something that we are not familiar with. So this gives the attacker an opportunity to launch what we call social engineering and phishing attacks. So like you receive an email from saying that from an account department, and then please click on this. I've not seen it before, probably there's something new. Okay, so I will click on it and key in my password. Okay. So also work from home, you also bring in company data, mix it with the, our home data. So now become what we call a single point of failure. So as long as the home machine is compromised, okay, so is the company data. So the security now is all pushed to the homes. Okay. So all this attack surface, the attacker is going to exploit it. Okay, there's no question about it, and they are here to stay. Okay, but we see it from another angle. Digitalization, of course, will improve productivities. Okay, and regarding the security aspect, with proper investment in security and attention and awareness, I believe that this can be managed. For example, new application, company can continue harden their applications, revising their workflow. So using Zoom as an example again, okay, so after they discover all the vulnerability, all the security patch, a bug is being patched, they also revised how we use the Zoom, have a waiting room and so on. And from individual point of view, then we still need to practice, okay, proper cyber hygiene. And with respect to this work from home, then we have to be aware of it. Important is to be aware, acknowledge, and know that it's an important issue, and try to segregate the work from family or entertainments. And then, yeah, with all this investment, effort, attention, and awareness, I think we can be protected from this virus. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ee-Chien. Next, we have Benjamin. Can you share with us some of your thoughts on the topic?
Sure, Irene, and thanks for inviting us all to speak today. I'd like to build on what David and Ee-Chien have said and really focus on three groups of people. And the first one is the average man, as David was talking about. Because previously, computers were mainly used by people who were working in offices with the support of an IT department. Now it's all of us, including a lot of people who would not have had to use computers that much before. And it's not just a technology issue, it's also a people and process issue. Because a lot of the processes that make sense in the office just don't apply when you're back home. You didn't have to worry about keeping people out of a meeting when you were in the office, but now when you're at home, you have to worry about your children and your cats and your neighbors. So we have to really help people who are struggling through this. And I think then of the second group of people, which are all the small businesses and people who are previously working in lines of work which didn't require so much computer access, who, well, thankfully because of digitization, are able to carry on their business and able to carry on work. So we are grateful for digitization because it has helped. But on the other hand also, because the tools, as Ee-Chien has pointed out, were rolled out very quickly, we now have to look at them moving forward to harden them and to processes as well. For example, all the hawkers or coffee shop owners who have been scammed by end users who do screenshots of their payments. I mean, these are processes that we need to work out. And then I come to the third group of people, and these are the people whom we were looking at thanks to some research done with the Internet Society and also Professors Lim San San, Irene Ng, and Natalie Pang, and Sophia Morales. And it's the underserved population, the less educated, the lower income population who have not had access to computers before but now have had to, whether it's for their work or whether it's for their small business or whether it's for their children having home-based learning. And because many were previously mobile only, they have certain understanding or knowledge of how technology works, which can work on a mobile phone if you're just in a safe app environment. But it's different if you're using now a full-blown computer with all the particular risks that there are with it. So I wouldn't want to put David on the spot, but the CSA has a safer cyberspace master plan, which has really been very useful to address all these on the whole of society, and especially for, I will point out one thing, the care now taken for smart devices, because many of us who are working from home right now are working next to smart devices, and the smart TVs on our same network as our home computer, and as well as the office computer is listening to us all the time. We need to think about those things as well. But if we can get it right, the digitization is already happening. If we get it right, we'll have a very good future ahead. We just have to make sure that everybody is equally protected, because we are not all safe until all of us are safe.
Right. Thank you, Ben. We have Stephen, last one to go before we launch into a Q&A.
Yes, thank you very much, Irene, and thank you for all my fellow panelists on your sharing. It's always interesting to go last because whatever what they have covered before, I have to kind of see how that makes, in my case, the context. I mean, for myself, I'm fortunate is because I do take up my new roles, so I see things in many different ways, which I'll mention a bit. But for me, actually, the biggest thing is a lot of people talk about COVID. They talk about crisis. They talk about the bad things that happens when COVID comes. Of course, I'm not advocator for COVID. I don't wish it had come. Problem, the crisis is here. It's here, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's here. But one thing that comes with crisis is, and sometimes people forget about this, is crisis have the bad side of it, but also the opportunities that arises because of crisis. You should learn from the crisis, and what are the things that the crisis has actually enabled. And there are two things here that the crisis actually has helped accelerated. As I said, I'm not advocating COVID. It's just that if you look at it, Singapore as a smart nation, we have always been along the digitization trend. And in my workplace, I mean, other than looking after the degree program in information security, I also look after, I'm also the director of the Center of Digital Enablement, where we support the digital transformation of the university. So to me, the COVID was a good thing because all of a sudden now I do not need to convince people as much. They all have to work from home. So it does help the whole process. So in a way, that is the advantage of it. I mean, while this crisis has shown us what technology is able to do and what it's not able to, the thing is, what do we learn from this? Because, matter of fact, COVID is unprecedented in certain ways. I don't think this is the last time we have seen a pandemic like this. It will come, or it may come again. And it will be a waste if the next time this comes again, we are as unprepared as we are today. So what are some of these key lessons that we can take on board? Right? So I think in terms of digitization, that's good. But also in terms of that, the rapid digitization that has happened, as David and my fellow panelists have talked about, there's also another advantage actually. Because in the past, when we talk about cybersecurity, it seems like a very dirty word of sorts. Nobody wants to talk about it because they don't want to talk about the negative examples, or they say that this will only happen to somebody else but not myself. One thing that this whole situation has done is because of this rapid push towards digitization, a lot of these threats, a lot of these issues with cybersecurity floats to the surface. Everybody starts to realize it's no longer a problem. It's no longer somebody else's problem. It's actually our problem as well. So, I mean, if the university doesn't keep me busy enough, I was also the immediate past president of the Association of Information Security Professionals. So we deal with the profession, with the professionals a lot, and we deal with the vendors and the companies as well. And what you start to realize is, in the past, when you try to tell people, please take cybersecurity seriously, they look at you and they go, oh, okay, I'll wait for the next budget cycle and I'll think about it. Now you tell them, all your workforce is at home. You better do something about it. All of a sudden, you realize the bots are very agreeable. To them, this becomes a major risk, right? So I think that's the advantage of it. And actually, the last one is because other than all these roles that I do, one role that I am, I'm also a parent. When you force me to work from home, immediately I would think, it's all okay if you only force me to work from home. Keep my kids in the school. That didn't happen. So as we all know, when the lockdown happened, all the kids came home as well. And all of a sudden now you have this whole issue of, oh, your kids are there while you are working in your presumably safe environment. The kids are there going online learning and you do not know what they are doing. And again, I mean, some people are fortunate enough to have multiple devices at their home, but not everybody is as fortunate as I think that Jamin mentioned about inclusion. I mean, these are issues that you didn't see previously that now surfaces to the surface. How do we cope with this? So net, when I look at all this, in all the different roles and different angles I look at it, I can sum it up to two things, all right? A is don't care or don't know. Okay, these are the two things that seems to surface up quite a lot. Don't know is an easier problem to solve in a certain way. So you have the elderly citizens who are not digitalized, they are pushed into this because of COVID, or even some workers that they don't go on the digital platform because working from home they are forced to. To them, actually, by default, they are already very worried, they are very concerned about digitization. So they tend to care a bit more. And all you need to do is to give them the knowledge, okay, which is not an easy task, I must say, right? But once there's the knowledge, they will take care of their environments, you'll be more aware. My other problem is the don't care ones. Okay, the don't care ones happen to be the digital natives who know everything. And they tell you, I know what, right? Do they act on it? No, they will be the one who will be the first to click on the link. You tell them, oh, there's this magic button. Click on the link, you get credits for your game. They click the button. And they say, okay, click as many times as you want. They go then to their friends' devices, they go to their sisters' devices, they go to their parents' devices and start clicking. Are they aware of the concerns? Do they know phishing emails? Of course they do. Problem is they don't care. And here's, I think, the bigger challenge to resolve. And as David mentioned correctly in the first place is, in the past, people tend to segregate all this responsibility. This responsibility of the school, this responsibility of your workplace, your IT department. As a parent, now all of a sudden, this is my responsibility because this impacts my work. How do you then get the parents involved in this to really educate and their children, their family members about this importance? And if there's any message to bring back, and I'll summarize with this before we go on, is this is something that parents can tell their children today, or if you want to, you can replay this recording if you see it online. It's really the message to the kids. All right, they are so used to digitization and they are not aware of the risk and the impact of this. I must let you know this, is that because the parents now work from home, things that you take for granted in the past, you think that it has no risk to you. Let me tell you this, you being careless, I mean, the digital natives, the students, children at home, okay, you being careless in what you do will impact or may impact your parents' careers. One wrong click of a button, that's it. Your parents' career can be ruined by just you. And with that will go everything. Your Christmas present that you wanted, your iPhone or whichever what that you want, the movies that you want to go for, even the food on the table. That is the impact that we are looking at. It's very real. We don't want to have too many of these stories to tell in the future, and we really hope it's not. So I think for parents, this is something that we do need to inculcate into the children. Now your workplace is their home environment. What they do on their own devices, what they do that they think is part and parcel of their surroundings will impact you, will impact the family, will impact the family as a whole, the career, even the food on the table. Yeah. So hopefully that summarizes what I want to mention.
Thank you, Stephen. Great. And as all of you have rightly summarize that COVID has forced digitalization on everyone, for better or worse. Everyone, from the very young to the very old, they have to do something now that they didn't used to do before. And these developments have increased the surface area of attack, and there are many buckets of users affected. And all these problems were all brought on all of us all at once, and we have so many things to tackle. So looking at all the segments, of risks and buckets of users, bringing with the irresponsible behavior, whether it's irresponsible behavior or lack of knowledge, they bring with them risks. So which segment has carried the greatest risk, which need immediate attention, and how do we solve this problem? Stephen, you mentioned the don't care, the don't care group of people being one of them, and then we have those who are the elderly and very young who do not know, who can be taught and are willing to learn. So is there a single group which carry the highest risks, and how do we deal with them? Are we addressing the problem adequately in addressing the risks brought by this group of users? Maybe David can start first.
Sure, thank you. I don't think there's any one particular group that is the problem. I see the whole challenge that we are facing for digitalization and for cybersecurity as everybody's problem. All of us are involved in some way, shape or form. The young people who have to go online, the working adults, the teenagers, the young adults, the older people and the seniors, all are involved in this journey of digitalization, in the journey of Smart Nation. And as some of the panelists have said, there is great opportunity. So it's not something that we should shy away from. The challenge is how do we grasp the opportunities, but at the same time try to maintain some level of security. I put it this way, I draw the analogy with the physical world. In the physical world, all of us have instincts. All of us know what to do about physical security. When you leave your home, you lock the door. If you're driving, you lock your car. You don't leave your wallet on the table. You don't leave your handphone lying around. And if you're overseas, if you're walking down a dark alley, you instinctively are a bit more cautious. Now, how did all of us learn this? We didn't attend a course by the Singapore Police Force. You don't have to go and attend a course to learn this. Instead, all of us learned this when we were growing up. Our parents taught us what to do. We picked up these skills along the way. So this is the challenge that I think we are facing in the digital world. Because in the digital world, our parents didn't teach us anything. We are teaching our parents what to do about being safe online. So in some respects, the way that I would put it is that all of us have been thrust into the 21st century without having the instincts to operate in this digital domain. So this is something that we have to learn. We are not digital natives. I speak the language, but I speak it with an accent. My children are digital natives. So they will become much more proficient at this than we are. For many of us, myself included, the instincts of what you think, what you naturally do may not be correct. So these are things that we have to learn, because operating in the digital domain is not natural to us. Hopefully it will come more naturally to the younger generation. Now, what can we do? Well, I think that there are a few things that we can do. First of all, is I look at my own childhood. When I was in school, the teacher gave us all a toothbrush, and then we all had to go and squat by the drain and brush our teeth. Okay? Now, the teacher was not an oral hygienist, but we had to learn these basic skills of how to be a little bit more, take care of our personal hygiene. In the same way, I think we need to learn basic skills for cyber hygiene. How to be a bit more careful, use strong passwords, be careful about phishing emails, update your software, use two-factor authentication. These are basic things. They're not rocket science. These are basic skills which we have to eventually learn. And I think these will deal with 80-90% of the threats that we see. As I said, I think it's a issue of education. It's an issue of being exposed and an issue of taking it up. I want to pick up on Stephen's point. I agree that there are some people who are, I won't say they don't care, perhaps they are overconfident. The younger people are digital natives. They think they know, but there is a big challenge because I think the physical domain is not the same as the digital domain. In the physical domain in Singapore, we're very safe. We operate in a very safe environment. Actually, sometimes you may have forgotten to lock your car, or you may have forgotten to lock your house door when you leave. But nothing bad happens because the overall environment in Singapore is still, broadly speaking, safe. In the digital domain, we aren't connected to some Singaporean internet. Okay? Once we go, we are connected to the World Wide Web. This is the beauty of it because all the world's knowledge, all the world's entertainment is there at our fingertips. But it also means that all the world's criminals are there and able to attack us. So this is the kind of mindset that we need to overcome and then be a little bit more cautious.
Mm-hmm. Great. Stephen and Ee-Chien, you mentioned single point of failure during your presentation. And when all the devices are on the same network and people are sharing computers and laptops, how do you segregate? And we talk about digital inclusion. There are families who cannot afford segregation. And Stephen, you talk about, Ben, you talk about risks on smartphones being different from computer risks. How are they different, and what are some of the things that we need to be aware of that the laptop the risk will surface on laptop but not on the smartphone? So how are they different, and how do we gauge and learn to manage both devices? Maybe single point of failure. Why don't we talk about segregation and then the different risks on different devices?
Okay, yeah. So just now David mentioned a very interesting idea of instinct on physical security. So when we design protection mechanisms, sometimes we inspired by this sense of physical security. For example, segregation is about setting up security parameters. Security parameters, so you can imagine that, okay, this one is my space, no one come over here. So when you have a segregation, something happen within a parameter will not spill over to others. So how does this apply to work from home, for example? Okay, so there will be two aspects. One is the system aspect, and one is the workflow aspect. So the system. So as far as possible, of course, it's possible use different desktop or laptop for different person. Your children use a different laptop, and we use a laptop for work. If this is not possible, then try to segregate them. For example, like laptop, we can set up different accounts. And even you have your own machine, like for myself, I also have a segregation of this is an account for working, this account for family, and so on, and this account for playing games. so these are more of the system aspect. Okay, you do a segregation. And the other one is a more workflow or mindset. Okay, for example, like when now we mix everything together, data, whatever, while you are calculating, cut and paste your company data. For me, the student exam questions, then my wife will come in and ask me some question, and then I do something else, right? So there could be a slip of mind. Okay, this really depends on personality. I mean, whether you're multitask or not, and the control of the screen and so on. So it's possible you also try to segregate your workflow, make sure that now I'm doing my work, and now I'm doing something else, making sure that there's no flow of data from one to another. So this is, in some sense, it's just one line of work of what to do. There are many things to do. Okay, so maybe this is one thing to know about, is that try to separate your work from your family and something else. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll follow up the point. I mean, from what David has mentioned about this, they are not, actually, if I look at this, for the longest time we have been looking for the definition of a sixth sense. Yes. If you look at it, actually the digital world is where the sixth sense is. That's where you have to develop your sixth sense. because the way the digital world operates and the way the physical world operates is very different. Physical worlds, you are bound by time, you are bound by what you can see. There's a perimeter to nearly everything. In the digital world, there's no such things. Things happen very quickly. One snap of a finger, things happen. Transaction of money. You look at the physical world, to move a lorry load of money from one place to another, most probably 10,000 people will see it. Digital world, one click of the button, it happens. How much money? Of course, when you see a truck load, physical world, you say, well, that's a lot of money. In the digital world, it's just a number of zeros that you don't feel. So I think this is a very long problem. I think something that we need to build as an intuition, as something, as second nature. It has to be a sixth sense. And this has to happen in very early childhood education from the very start. It has to be a culture that's being developed. Just now we mentioned this is a big reset. It is, and it is an opportunity, because if you look at this, now all of a sudden, the way that people deal with the digital space, if we have done this slowly, it will never have surfaced until a big thing happened and then all of a sudden everything collapsed and then we restart. So whether we can make use of this opportunity to start inculcating some of these best practices, be it segregation, be it being protecting your devices, strong password, and so on and so forth, such that it becomes second nature, it becomes, you sense it once you go into it. Whether you click a button, it doesn't become a natural thing. Now you see the link, you click. When it becomes second nature, you don't even need to think not to click. Your natural response is see first, then click. So how do you develop this as a second nature? I think that's where parents, educators, even the workforce all have to play a big part, because the challenge with the digital natives, as David correctly mentioned, sometimes they think they know, but actually none of us know, because it's not an inherent sense we are born with. I don't think 10,000 years ago that was digitization. We weren't born with that sixth sense. We all have five senses. So that's one thing. Another thing, I think, to follow up with the conversation on segregation. Segregation is a good practice that we have done, but there's another one that I would like, maybe if that's something to take home for everyone to look at. Going with the analogy that David was talking about, when you go to a new place, a new country, what do you look out for? You look for dark alleys. You look for where the risks are. What are you very protective about? Your wallet. Why so? Because your money is there and so on and so forth. It's your asset. That's something that doesn't happen in the digital space. So actually, one thing that I would like everybody to do, actually, if you're going to take away something from this, if you're working from home, I want you to look at this. What are the key assets that you have in your home, right? When you're working from home, what information, what things will, when compromised, will impact your family, will impact your business, will impact your work? Take note of all this, because segregation is good. I think do that. But we also have this practice of saying that, okay, all you need for a bridge is the weakest link. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It will happen. And when it does happen and you're not aware, so for example, you go to a country, you are not aware that your wallet is important to you. And when you lose it, then you realize it just doesn't happen naturally. So when you go back home, look at it in your work environment now at home. What are the important assets? Where is this digital assets? Is it your email? Is it certain approval processes even? Is it a piece of device that your kid is using that you think if that is compromised means that, for example, even the video surveillance of a home, if that is compromised, everything get compromised. Start to look at that and start to identify what are some of these risk assets that you have in your home, right? And take a compromise by default position. If something happens there, what do I do? Because then you will not be caught at a loss when things do happen. Very immediately, you can notify your company, you can notify your children's teachers, you can start to react to it. Okay, that's what we call incident response. It happens in corporate settings. Very seldom does it happen at home because it's not our culture to do so. But it should be something that we start looking at, because all these digital assets are assets. They are important. So start to recognize what are these assets, what are the risks that's involved with them. I think that would be one of the key takeaway, other than segregation, is also identify of your digital assets at home and what are the risks affiliated to it.
Right. I want to ask a follow-up question to that before we go to Ben to talk about risks on smartphone, how it's different from those on laptops. Would you recommend having separate networks for different things at home? I mean, Ee-Chien talk about separating user accounts and on different devices, but all these devices still run on the same network. If that single network is compromised, it doesn't matter what you separate, everything is compromised. So would you recommend a different?
Yeah, I think the challenge here is not everybody can afford or know how to set up a home broadband network as separate networks. In actual fact, if you look at any common household, everybody is on separate networks. How? They're on their own mobile devices. And all the mobile devices like these are all directly connected to the telco. They are on different networks. So while they are on different networks, is good that is good in a certain way that we have physical separation of data. Of course, whatever is in my phone will not magically appear the other side, unless if the people are the connectors. If my kid use my phone today, which I don't allow them to use, you don't know what's going to happen. So in terms of physical segregation, I think it's good. It's already happening. All right. But I also want to make this point to some of my other colleagues who are technically savvy, who says, oh, I created VPN in my house. I have multiple segregations. There's also something called a false perception of a safe harbor. Once you think you are safe, you are not. So that's why just now I mentioned, look at it from the other aspects. Not to create mass hysteria, but to really understand that the way to sleeping easy is very easy. I mean, just like when you go overseas. When I go overseas, what's the most important things for me? My passport, right? My passport and one credit card at least, because anything else I can settle from there. So likewise, when you're in a home environment, that's why I was mentioning, look at your assets. Look at where your assets are, what are key critical failure points. All right, you can do segregation, you can do awareness and so on and so forth, but you need to be aware of all this. Okay, and when that comes, the natural instinct is to protect them. So you get a lot more awareness when your child says, can I use your laptop? For example, immediately you think, hey, my email is one of the risk assets that I've identified. Default answer is no. So that's where we look at it. So I think physical segregation do help, but having false assumptions or having false safe harbors may not help as well. So while we are doing all this, as what David mentioned, it's a whole new world we are going to, the digital world. The way that buildings are being built are very different in digital world to a physical world. We'll get there. It's just this journey that we are going to go through.
Right. Well, it now looks like there is a killer application for 5G at home. In the past, we were all assuming that home broadband is all we need. We don't need 5G. But, well, based on what we're talking about, it seems like now we need our mobile networks at home. So, Ben, you mentioned that there are, the different risks on smartphones and laptops. What should, users who are used to or familiar with a smartphone pay special attention to when they get onto the laptop?
One of the big things that if you're used to making your transactions on a smartphone and it's coming through an app, or you are getting onto a mobile site, you usually don't see a lot of the visual cues that you get on the laptop. So if you're running all your transactions on a mobile phone, you need to be extra careful. And it's a really easy way to get phished. And in the past, years ago, I can say that I got phished when I was at the day when I was actually provisioning a replacement credit card. I had my bad luck on that day to receive a phishing email, phishing SMS that looked just like it came from my bank. But now to segue to what Stephen has said, I like the example that he's given because I had the phone number of my bank to call right away. I could get that transaction cancelled and I could tell the bank. And also I like the analogy that Stephen gave about when you travel. In a sense, even though we are now stuck at home, we are actually overseas every day.
Digitally.
Yeah, we're digitally overseas every day. And we need to think of ourselves that way. What is our passport? What is our wallet? And do we have the backup? Do we have, when we travel, sometimes you carry a photocopy of your passport in case you lose your original. Do you have a backup of the data in case you get ransomware on your devices? And the same thing with your IC, or do you have the phone number of the bank to call in case you realize that one of your numbers has been compromised? So I think those are very useful. And these are something that you don't need to be very tech savvy to have, because it's just making sure you have the right phone numbers in place. You have copies of things in case you lose the original. And it's not really advanced. But I do agree that there are issues if you are now asking a household which has never had to deal with multiple devices, especially laptops as compared to mobile phones, and the amount of things that can be done. And there are fortunately NGOs and civil society that are helping, Engineering Good, and who are helping to provide devices. And of course MOE also has been a scheme to provide devices to households. But we need to do more to help them so that we can all be safe together.
If I can just build on the conversation, I think the key is for us to understand that the digital world offers us great opportunities, and we should make full use of it. But at the same time, we need to be careful that when we do this, that we don't take all the risks unknowingly. So it's the conceptual equivalent of if I'm going to go somewhere, I don't take all my money out of the bank and carry it with me. I don't take all my valuables, with me as I travel. Obviously, you try to be aware of what the risks are, and you try to protect those things which are important. So the examples that Stephen gave, you be careful about your wallet, you be careful about your phone, and you be careful about your passport. Today, for many of us, when we go digital, when we go online, we don't realize and what is important to us digitally, what the important things are, and we don't protect them more carefully. And secondly, as what Stephen said, we are not prepared. So if you have a credit card, you have the number somewhere that in case of loss or whatever, you will call it. We don't have the similar game plan if we lose something digitally. So that's food for thought, that we need to be careful. But the point that I want to make is that we need to be careful not to go fully online and not to take all the risks online. We must use the online services. However, be careful that when you do use them, that you don't expose your entire family, you don't expose all your work, you don't expose all your life savings into this. Our instincts also need to improve. In the old days, if you walk on the street and a stranger comes up to you and says that, oh, I'm from the bank and I need your ATM number, you look at him, it's like, show me your ID, It's like, who are you? Why is my bank asking me for my ATM number here in the middle of the street? But somehow or other, the same thing is happening online, and we fall for it. I'm not exactly sure why we do this. If you look at some of the phishing emails, Ee-Chien put it very nicely, these are social engineering attacks. That's a fancy way of saying that you've been tricked. Okay? Actually, it is a low-level trick. Someone has come up to you and pretended, oh, I'm from the bank, I'm from DHL, please give me your information. And we fall for it. So in the same way that you would not do this on a street, you will not do this at a shopping center, you won't give your ATM number away, we need to be a little bit more careful. We need to ask ourselves, why is this person asking me for this information? Should I give my information? And if the information is for my bank account, I will think 2 times, 3 times before I give it.
Right. We talked about being situationally aware and having our antennas, and feelers up there, detecting, anomalies and things that look strange or weird. This is one of the questions submitted by our readers who they submitted the questions beforehand, and it is in line with what we've been speaking about, that even careful individuals who do not give away their personal details, security code and passwords have fallen prey to hacked phones and laptops and hijacked WhatsApp accounts. I've known of very senior executives, and who are into very highly aware and attuned to cyber risks, falling prey to WhatsApp account hijacking. Are there technical measures that can help, help us poor, human beings, even if we are attuned to all these risks, we are still falling prey to the clever tricks. Are there technical tools, antivirus software or whatever, or are we as helpless as we are now as before?
If I may, I will build on Stephen's earlier point. It's people, process, and technology. So the short answer is that there's not going to be a technical answer to solve this problem. Technology is not a silver bullet. You need to overcome this from 3 dimensions: the technology, the people, and the process element. So specifically for like WhatsApp hijacking, actually you need to have a 6-digit one-time PIN that comes. If you key it in or you give it to somebody to key it in, then you can get it hijacked. The question is, how did the person get it? And he got it through a social engineering trick. That is typically how it happens. So someone has managed to trick you, to give you the impression he's your friend and that he or she has asked for this 6-digit PIN. Can you please give it to them? The short answer is be suspicious. It's like, why are you, Irene, why are you calling me and asking me for a 6-digit PIN? You know, like, oh, it's for this. Are you sure? You know, and the easiest way to do it is pick up the phone and call. Irene, is that really you? You know, and I want to hear your voice. You know, like, is it really you on the line? And chances are it's not. The person is someone who's pretending to be you. So I think it is not a technical issue per se. It is a process issue. It is a people issue. People need to hone their skill set to be suspicious. It's like, is this really thing? And then from a process angle, the technical term is out-of-band verification. The simple thing, what we're trying to say is like, pick up the phone and call, you know, like, Irene, is that really you? It's like, what on earth, you know, like, is happening? Yeah. It's not all technical problems need a technical solution. Sometimes a simple process issue or just being a bit more careful, I think, will solve the issue.
So the WhatsApp apps one, that one particular incident is really bad. Okay, the hacker actually exploit the trust of your friends. Basically, is that they already hijack. That means they already compromise your friend account, then pretend to be your friend and ask you for something. So so for this, then we just have to practice our usual instinct that to know that the person who talked to me virtually might not be the real person. So at one point, there's a friend who asked some favor from me. Then through email and whatever, I insisted I want to see his face. Yeah. So this is some judgment that we need to do, and sometimes it is easy to relate to a physical environment. You say, oh, you have to keep aware that there is a sub scenario that the person who talked to you is not the real person. Yeah.
Right.
So can I just build onto this point, because the part about technology, maybe I'll throw back this, because I hear this a lot, everybody saying, oh, what technology can do to help us and so on and so forth. And is there sufficient technology? Let me throw back this challenge for everybody who is at home. How do you prevent a mosquito from entering your house? Correct? I mean, it's as difficult as that. All it takes is one mosquito. If you can prevent that, I mean, how can you do that? Correct? It's going to be tough. You are not saying don't do the technology, don't install antivirus. You should, because if you leave your door wide open, you leave the window wide open, mosquito is going to come in. But it also doesn't mean if I lock all my doors, unless I air seal it, of course, of which I couldn't inhabit it as well, then you just can't leave. As long as I'm going to live in it, i.e. if I'm going to live in the digital world, I have to, and I'll be exposed. Definitely. There's no way of keeping the mosquito out of the house. So it's as simple as that. I mean, if you look at the analogy. And the question here, again, back to the points that we are raising, what to do when you get bitten by a mosquito, because you are going to be bitten by a mosquito. You try your best to prevent it. The WhatsApp, likewise. I mean, this scam is clever. Similar clever scams will be out there that we haven't discovered. It will come. And when that point comes, I think that's what we're mentioning just now. Be aware of the assets. Be aware of what is your reaction when that happens, when your WhatsApp get hijacked. What do you do? Okay, what is important? Immediately you know, okay, my WhatsApp is hijacked. Do I do approval via WhatsApp? Of course, that's a process problem. I mean, then you have to think about it. Did I just put my assets at risk by doing this as an approval process, and rethink about it? People process technology. The one that's least evil is actually technology. Technology is there, it's ready. Process is next. Actually, if you look at it, the worst ones there, or the weakest link, is always the people. So I think that's where we need to be mindful. I mean, it's not, don't do technology, don't be fearful of technology. Technology is there to help you, all right? But you as the person, you are the key. I think that's where we are at, yeah.
And to build on what Stephen's saying, we actually were able to use people and process to actually solve this problem, because also in my capacity with the Internet Society Singapore chapter, we once received a business email compromise, phishing email, that was basically impersonating our existing president to ask the existing treasurer to transfer a sum of money out of the bank to pay a vendor. But because we actually picked up the phone and checked, is this you? Why are we doing this transaction? We were able to stop it. But that also comes to the culture. And the part of the people issue actually is that we don't exist in isolation. Our organizations need to have more digital empathy we have been pushing for things to get done quick, fast. And because of technology, okay, quick, reply to me within seconds. But we need to be able to have organizations that say, okay, I'm going to give space for you to stop and think and verify before we actually push the button literally on this issue, so that we don't have this, we don't build a culture of, okay, the moment I see an email telling me to transfer money, I'll do it straight away. We need to also build that into our organizations, that there is such a culture that can support the people and the process.
Right, like a prompt that says, do I really want to do this? Think. And there's some tech, prompters to help. Do you really want to transfer $1,000? It's like, yes, I do.
And the verification can't be on the same channel. Right. So if I get an email from you saying, David, please give me this amount of money, then I can't just use the email and reply, Irene, is that you? Because the answer will be, yes, it's me. So you have to use an alternate channel. The technical term is out-of-band verification. Right. But in simple English, it means pick up the phone and call you. Irene, is that you? I didn't send you an email, That's the way to verify it.
Right. Old-fashioned way, yeah.
I think the pop-ups, it may work initially. Very soon people will ignore the pop-up, just like how people install app nowadays.
Right.
Of course, you pop up, the app is going to ask you for you simply ignore. I mean, once it becomes habitual, as we're mentioning, technology and technology intervention can only help for a while. Ultimately, it's still about the process and the culture of the people to get this to work.
If I can just pick on Stephen's point, I think this is an important point. We can't, as it were, protect everything. If you try to do everything, then I think you will get very tired very quickly and you will then make a mistake. I think what is more important is to be clear on what is important, what is essential to you, what costs a lot of money, what is irreplaceable. Then those things are your critical assets. It's the same in your physical world. You don't try to protect everything. Certain things you leave outside your door, your slippers, your shoes, etc. We don't typically keep everything inside. You have taken mentally some risk to leave some things outside, and you're prepared mentally that you might lose it, might get damaged. But if you buy a new pair of shoes or new pair of slippers, then it's important to you, then you keep it in the house at least for a couple of months until your mental model changes. So I think in the same way, we must be clear on what is important and we protect those and we take more care for those. And for others, well, I think the reality is that we can't be double checking and triple checking everything. And then you take some risks. But it's important that you're clear on what you're taking risks for and what you aren't prepared to take risks for.
Right. Ben, you wanted to say something earlier on? No? Okay. Yeah.
They said it well already.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we all learn from someone, be it our parents or a teacher or a colleague or an industry veteran, in cybersecurity, to learn safe ways and safeguards, how to protect ourselves, our assets, and our digital life. So is there a resource where parents could go to? Some of the pros of this COVID, this lesson, and parents working from home is they are stuck with their children at home, and they can offer advice, when needed, and they can offer guidance to the kids on safe surfing habits and so on. Are there resources online or resources that parents can refer to on how to guide their children or for children to read and learn from? Is there a single resource? I think a safer cyberspace master plan may have some, recommendations. Maybe David or Ben can talk about it.
Yes, I think a lot of the outreach programs from CSA available on their website reach out to all levels, reach out to schools, reach out to students, to parents, to all walks of life. So those are definitely a very good starting point. And there are many resources online for this. And also for parents to keep in touch with the schools as well, to find out what is happening and what resources are available, because some schools are also providing this. I think these things are available. The main thing is to be on the lookout for it, to actively search, and then you can help.
Right.
Yeah. So CSA has a website called Go Safe Online. So many of our tips on how to go safe, go online safely are there. As I think what Ben said, they're available. And in fact, it's not restricted to CSA. The beauty of the internet is that you can go and access resources from all over the world. So actually, there are many resources about this. But I want to pick up on the point about the Safer Cyberspace Master Plan. This is something which we launched 2 months ago. Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat launched a new master plan, which we call the Safer Cyberspace Master Plan. The idea is really to try for us to create a safer cyberspace for the whole of Singapore, not just the essential services, but the man in the street, small and medium enterprises, etc., to sort of try to address the challenge which we've been talking about of all this cyber hygiene, how to raise the general level of cybersecurity across the board. So we've got 3 major thrusts in the Safer Cyberspace Master Plan. The first one is for us to go upstream. As many of you mentioned, if you think about it, we gain our internet access through the internet service providers, the telcos mostly. If we can address the problem upstream, then it'll be more efficient, more effective to deal with some of that up there. Second is we want to achieve a level of early detection across the board. And if we can detect malicious activity that's taking place, hopefully we can deal with it again before it reaches the individual. And then the third thrust is that eventually the mosquito will get in. Some mosquitoes will come in, but our hope then is the third thrust is to empower much more cyber savvy population and small business entities, where they will then know what to do. So it's at 3 levels. One is going broader, and then second is detect it upfront, and then thirdly is for people to be aware that when scams make their way through, that they know what to do. The analogy I will give is a bit like water. If you think about it, each of us needs to get water. Then how do we try to purify the water? So if you think about cybersecurity as this kind of a problem today, individual companies, enterprises are trying to purify their own water. So they got their own filtration plant, or they dig their own well, etc. For individuals, I guess many of us tie a sock to the tap, and then you hope that that will filter the water to some extent. It will be more effective, more efficient if we can do it upstream, similar to what PUB does for the real water supply. So that's broadly analogy of what we are trying to do. And then eventually, like I said, there will be challenges which still make it through because it will not be 100%. Then the population, the small and medium enterprises need to be aware how to deal with it. So that in a nutshell is the Safer Cyberspace Master Plan.
Right.
Maybe I can just follow up a bit about the awareness part, because I think with the association I'm with, ASP, we do have a cybersecurity awareness and advisory program where actually we do have a body of knowledge for SMEs for cybersecurity. So it does cover certain aspects of it. I think my colleagues, all the volunteers, they have been very actively reaching out to the SMEs. But you look at it, and I like the water analogy because it flows. It doesn't just apply to SMEs. If you look at it this way, SME is a business, of course. You look at this, the Tauke's will know what to do, then they will manage people who are in their organization, but spread the knowledge to their employees. But the employees, what they could do, because we are talking about finding the correct information, these practices are not just limited to the enterprise. When you go back home as parents, your kids are in your payroll. So, correct, whatever what you have learned from there, be it setting strong passwords, being aware, being phishing emails, how to identify. These are things that parents, you as the paymaster to your kids, you can start to inculcate them about these practices that you have learned in your organization. So it's no longer segregated to what I learned in work means it's for work. It's no longer the case. You can take some of these practices and practice it at home. And as you practice it long enough, the hope is, as David has mentioned, you inculcate a culture that becomes inbuilt to the kids. When they go out to work, you don't have this problem to solve. Or else you always wait for the gap to be solved when they go out to work. So that's something that I hope that parents who are working, you can start to do this, because the demarcation between work, home is now becoming very blurred. Right? Good practices that you learn in terms of cybersecurity at home, at your workplace, bring it to the home. Teach your kids that. Okay, you will help resolve a problem in the future. When they go out to the workplace, they are now a lot more, not only digitally savvy, but they are a lot more secure as well. And gradually, if this cycle continues, we'll just have a safer and safer cyberspace. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from. I think it's just like the water flow. Yeah, don't wait until the water hit the reservoir to purify it, or vice versa. Yeah, it's all interconnected. Yeah.
Right.
And I really like the water analogy because it really brings to mind a lot of things. When we are not going to go back to the same world before pre-COVID as we had. A lot of things have changed irreversibly. And so digital is like water now. And if we are looking after our small business or whether we're looking after our team or our families, we have to be able to be aware that, okay, there is going to be purification of the water at the source. But once it arrives with us, we need to also check, is the cup clean? Is the bowl clean that the water is in? If the pipe is leaking or the pipe has been polluted along the way and everything is coming out with residue, we don't drink it straight away. We need to create that kind of understanding and among our kids. If water has been sitting out there overnight and now the stuff growing in it, don't drink it. Same thing that if something has been in the digital world, they have to be careful so that, as Stephen was saying, when they're out in the working world, they don't bring bad habits with them. Because unlike the gaming world, if you make a mistake at work, you cannot respawn.
Right, that's right.
You don't have multiple lives in your workplace. Once you are dead, you are dead. But on the bright side, once we learn how to master this, and this is the opportunity, then we can all take, like, sorry to use an analogy again, fish to water, yeah, and then it'll be good for everybody.
Right. Great. I think at this point in time, it's quite timely for us to take some questions from the audience. It's quite a nice junction. Okay, I have this question from a retired lawyer who is turning 70 next month. Actually, next month, yeah. Right, she said that she tried to stay relevant by attending IT courses and reading IT articles, but she finds it hard to keep up as technology becomes obsolete very quickly. Also, it is expensive to maintain an up-to-date computer system because software can cost hundreds of dollars, and we need to keep the system software updated, and patched, against the threats out there. And she also pays for home and mobile broadband services and hire computer technicians for repair and maintenance. All that adds up the cost, total cost of ownership. And there are also very few qualified and dedicated IT trainers or cybersecurity trainers at community centers. So she gave the analogy of a $10 attendance fee in a seminar attracts only $10 trainers. So she's wondering whether public agencies here or any organizations can better help seniors solve these problems.
I hope that's not true, because I do go to share many seminars with the elderly citizens as well, and I don't charge. So
Right.
I hope the advice I give there is a bit more better than the $10 one. I don't know, but there's a huge range of activities, and as what David has mentioned, actually there's a lot of information out there already. Okay. And in certain ways, if you identify what is important to you, you don't need to protect everything. I mean, just like the same case, do we need to always go for the latest software? You do need to patch them. Doesn't mean you need the latest version. Patching is usually free. Doesn't mean that because it's free, it's not useful. It is very useful. All right. You don't need to upgrade yourself. In actual fact, not against any mobile providers, but from one series to another series, do you really need that upgrade? It has nothing to do with cybersecurity. But whether do you need to patch it? And a lot of patches, as I mentioned, is free. You do need to patch it. So it actually may not be very expensive to keep your devices safe, right? In terms of the knowledge, this is where, again, I talk about the community. I mean, that from the association point of view, we do a lot of these talks. Myself, I really do quite a lot of it with the People's Association and so on and so forth. There are talks available. Cost is one part of it, I think, but working together with the public sector, we can try to mitigate all those. The thing here is no longer just us as an association or the public sector CSA going to give talks, or even education institution. It's really everybody is a teacher here. If you look at it, there's a lot of information that, as I mentioned just now, from the SME through the body of knowledge, the awareness that we put out to the SMEs, the employees there can bring that home. And maybe some of her kids can also advise her what is correct, what is wrong. Tap on that because it's a community. So we are now all part of this community. You don't need to really rely on dedicated professionals just to teach. Actually, there are, but a lot of this is not rocket science. Actually, I think several years ago, I did publish an article in Straits Times, a commentary, said that actually cybersecurity is not rocket science. It's actually very simple. And you should think of it that way, because once you complicate it, you become very frightened of it. And I think the whole doom and gloom thing is not what we want to drive here today. Actually, if you ask me, cybersecurity is simple. Just take the simple steps, identifying what is important to you for the lady. Look at what you have in your systems, at your age. What is your key assets? What is important to you? Okay, it can be as simple as photos. Then do you then keep them separately in a hard disk that then you can then not protect as much your laptop? What do you use your laptop for? Is it purely to read Straits Times? If it is, then
that would be great.
that would be great, and the protection that you require may not be as much. And if you are using it for serious transactions, then that's where you just have to be mindful. What is the amount of protection that you require? Whether you put all those on the laptop, then you don't need to protect your phone as much, or you put all on your phone and then you don't protect your laptop as much. So this type of things is something that you can do to try to mitigate your risk and then afford in an affordable way. Same thing for organizations. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And I think on a practical basis, you don't have to be protected to the highest possible level of cybersecurity if you are not involved in very high-level transactions. You do need to have security. And use Stephen's example, family members, friends, family members can help. The community can help. Yeah, it's
right.
Yeah. So I just to build on some of the points, the IT world, technology is moving at a very fast rate. Even those of us who are in the business find it very difficult to keep pace. But you don't need to keep pace with everything. So with respect to the concerns of security, then as what Stephen says, those are much more manageable and we just have to deal with those. So it's not about buying the latest technology. My phone, my house computer are actually several years old. But what I do ensure is that the software is updated. I don't buy the latest software, I don't buy the latest computer. And I make sure that those are updated. My television and my fridge are connected to the internet also, because nowadays that's the case. I confess that my TV and my fridge don't have an antivirus because I don't do any transactions with the TV or the fridge. So those are elements of how you don't have to raise the protection level of every device and everything to the highest level.
Right.
Specifically on some of the efforts, I think government is trying to reach out to the unreached communities to make sure that no one is left behind. There's digital inclusion. There's a program that the Infocom Media Development Authority and the Ministry of Communications and Information are doing about Seniors Go Digital. And there's also the SG Digital Office. And these are, I think, 750 people, real people who go down on the ground and reach out to seniors and other people to teach them some of the digital skills, cybersecurity, cyber hygiene, awareness, of course, some of these things. And of course, they do it on a face-to-face basis.
Right. Maybe at the end of this session, give me the links to all your free lectures on cybersecurity. We'll publish it and drive the public there. Yeah. So, and there's another question from our Zoom audience from Mr. Lim Chong Tek. I think he's picking up on the topic of using dedicated devices to do transactions. He's wondering on the topic of segregation and hardware to minimize compromises and cyber attack and cyber breaches. Would it be best to have a smartphone to be used solely for cyber banking and e-payment?
Well, so that depends whether you have a extra smartphone. Okay. So for segregation, okay, it's, I know many friends who actually have 2 or 3 phones, one for work, one for family. So if you are afford to do that, you do that. Okay. So if it's very important to you, you carry out high volume of transaction. Okay, then probably you may want to think about that. But otherwise, I mean, for myself, I don't have a separate one. Okay, so I do have a smartphone and do everything on this particular smartphone. And for segregation, And just now you mentioned about network segregation.
Right.
Network segregation, the way the computer system is designed is what they call by layer. Network is, in some sense, is the lowest layer. So it's okay to share the network. It's the segregation at the upper layer. Segregation upper layer in the subset, the application and a smartphone or whatever, but you're using the same network. The whole family using the same Wi-Fi. Don't go there and then get one M1 account and one. No, this is not what we mean by segregation of network. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
But what I would recommend this.
Yes.
Actually, I do it on separate devices and on separate networks.
Yes.
I will actually transact on my computer, which is hooked onto the fixed broadband network, and I receive my OTPs on my mobile, which is on the mobile network. So I achieve both network and device segregation at the same time when I'm doing my transactions. So I think it's quite safe that way.
Yeah, so I have to highlight one point is that transaction is what we do call a two-factor authentication.
Yes.
Two-factor authentication means there's two-factor. If an attacker happens to compromise one, you are still safe on the other one. So you just imagine, I mean, it's more like physical instinct. Everything on a smartphone. So if this is compromised, something is, whole thing is compromised. So it's better, like what you said, is that you use this energy, you have to be two channel or two factors. Yes.
So I do something similar to what Irene does. Whenever I do credit card purchases, I will transact on an iPad or a laptop. Then the OTP comes on my smartphone. So I will typically have this separate, to preserve the two-factor authentication.
Right. There's another question from our Zoom audience, an ST reader. He's asked, I've seen many VPNs, virtual private networks, being advertised on YouTube and elsewhere lately. Do they really help in terms of cybersecurity at home? Free one or paid one, you know?
So let's run this through a logical test, shall we? Today somebody tells me, oh, give me your wallet. I'll keep it safe for you. I'm free. And I'm free, I'm reliable, and I'm easily accessible. Give me your money. If anybody would give me the money, I'll be very glad. But you just don't do that in a normal, how do you call it, in normal life, physically. So if you don't do that physically, why would you want to do that in the digital world? I mean, and the concept, I mean, just now we talked about network segregation and so on and so forth. As I said, don't delve too much into the digital side of things that you become frightened of it, and then you think that that's a safe haven of sorts, that when people pushes to you, because they will. And those may be the adversaries. I'm not saying all of them are bad, because there may be good ones, I do not know. But those are opportunities that cybersecurity criminals will use, because they think that, oh, you think it's safe. What makes you think that this VPN is really a VPN? You're not just going through them to give you all your credit card details. So I think, again, it's not rocket science. It's very simple. Take a very commonsensical approach to all this. I mean, if it's free in real life, you wouldn't believe it. In the digital world, don't believe it as well. All right. We talk about the segregation. If I bring back to the earlier question, again, there are times that you can, there's times that you can't. Okay, not everybody can afford several devices, and sometimes, especially when you're overseas, sometimes you have to do things that you transact on one. Just be extra careful when you do this, okay, to ensure that these things go through. Give you an example. I'm one that is guilty of having multiple devices. I actually have like 5 or 6 devices. I have one that creates a virtual identity of myself as well, so that I'm totally segregated. But not everyone has that luxury. And sometimes when you go overseas, you only want to pay for one mobile broadband when you're overseas, right? So you have to do everything in one. But that's where your awareness comes in. I mean, after you have done this transaction, that's what I do as a second habit. I mean, I will go and check. Okay, I know that all this is done on the same devices. I'll go to my bank transaction to see, is that the transaction I do? During that period, I'll be extra careful. I'll relook again to see whether things have gone wrong. And if it does, then inform the banks early. So I think that's to answer that question. If you can have multiple devices, you'll be very safe. Multi-factor authentication is very good. If you can't, then it's not the end of the world. Okay, just need to be aware that during that point of time, you may be subjected to compromise. After that, just take a look at it and see whether you were. If you are not, continue so. Right? Again, back to the point that this false assumption of multi-factor. Multi-factor means different devices. A lot of organizations today say, okay, I send you an encrypted file, I'll send you the password via WhatsApp. And then you have one fellow who, on his mobile phone, pick up the document and then look at his WhatsApp on the same phone and then unzip it on the same mobile phone. That totally defeats the whole purpose. So I think that is the type of awareness that people need to be aware of. Sometimes you have no choice but to do it. In those types of situations, just be mindful, minimize that. When you have a choice, then use multi-factor, use different devices to help you authenticate.
Right.
Maybe I say something about VPN. VPN, basically what he said is that someone offer VPN services to you, saying that, let me handle all your communication. Whatever you say, go to me first, then I relay to other people. So, wow. So this is what we call a man in the middle. So this guy become man in the middle. So indeed, it's a VPN, it's a private network to him. Yeah. So very often we use VPN in some sense is to protect ourselves, our identity. We don't want to let the receiving end know where is this coming from. So I know people using this to watch movie or something like that. Yeah. So it doesn't actually make you safer in that sense.
How about paid services, paid VPN services?
Oh, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
This I have to highlight. This different from the company VPN or your school VPN. I'm talking about this type of
consumer grade
thing.
VPNs.
The school VPN is say that the school will handle your network or your company will handle your network, and they may have experts to help you to protect the traffics. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
If I look at it actually as a meta question, it's a good thing that these readers are actually asking these questions. And I think that those of us who have more knowledge of this also have to encourage our friends and family to ask these questions. Because what we have to be careful about is that, of course, now even more people are asking us these questions.
Right.
And those of us who know must be encouraging and supportive of those who don't know. Because it's more dangerous if they don't ask.
Right.
If they don't ask, then we're all in trouble. Right? So we don't want to discourage people from asking. I think it's really great that they're asking.
Right. Speaking about working from home, employees working from home, one of the submitted questions from a member of the audience is, where are the resources to educate organizations about the risk of cyber hacking and phishing with employees working from home? What are the do's and don'ts? Is there a checklist available somewhere for employees, for organizations to deploy their workers working from home?
CSA has a whole bunch on the website. Actually, if you just look at 10 tips for businesses who have employees working from home, you have 100 different entries on that. That's a lot of information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But one of the big things that we need to understand when we moved to work from home is that many businesses lost control. Because typically in the past, when you're operating within the office, then you're using a local area network, you're using the office computers, the office networks, and you have full control over this. And your IT is watching this, and you're able to detect any anomalous behavior or any hacks. Once you have allowed people, you have forced people to work from home, now they may well be connecting from home devices. They may be connecting through the office VPN, but from the home network. So the man in the middle attack for your Wi-Fi environment at home, for example, is a real concern. Many computers are not locked down. So people's children are using the computer to do their homework. They may be playing games, etc. So this becomes another source of potential vulnerability. So to the office environment, these new devices, these new entry points now become areas which they need to be concerned about. Companies need to recognize that this environment has changed. So post-COVID, now the question is what you're going to do. On the one hand, you can't revert to the old style of work. I think work from home at some point, at some level, is going to be here to stay. But on the other hand, we should also be mindful that actually, when we allow people to work from home, the risk environment has changed. Not just technical risk, also process risk and people risks. So for example, if I'm working in a bank, now you allow me to work home, I have sensitive customer data that's with me. It's out of the bank. That's a new risk factor. When I'm accessing the data, Who is behind me? Who is looking at the screen as I'm reading it? When I'm speaking to the client, who is listening to the conversation? These are things which have changed. Going forward, the question is this the same risk profile that the company wants to continue with, or perhaps you want to recalibrate it? These are not technical issues. These are risk management issues. These are business decisions that need to be taken. So actually, going forward, for many of us, these are the challenges that we have to face. As I said, they're not purely technical issues. They're people issues, they're process issues as well, and they're business issues.
Right.
Maybe if I can just take the point, I mean, for the readers and the viewer who was asking that question, I mean, rather than send you on an internet hunt, maybe I'll just do a very, very quick basic things that you should do. Okay, first of all, if you are working from home and you're accessing your email from home, your email becomes one of the channels of which your communications to the company is going to happen. Okay, if you have not set a strong password for that, please do. Okay, if you are using, for example, your home only has one computer, one thing is you can actually create several accounts within the same computer, all right, that your kids can use for their online studies. But for the one that you are doing for work, keep it there. All right, that's another one. The other one is don't leave just like what David was mentioning, when you go out of the house, you lock the house. Okay, likewise, all your computers nowadays have screensavers that can lock down. Just put a shorter time. I know it's a bit of a hassle, all right, that you may need to log in and out again and again when you are inactive. But this is something that unless you consciously go and do it, all right, which you don't want, it's better to just create a shorter timeout. So you are inactive for 2 minutes, lock out, or if you are inactive for 5 minutes, lock out, because you can't blame your child for coming in and just accidentally pressing a button. You can't. So that's something that I hope people do. The last one is on documents. Okay, when you're working from home, this beyond digitization, you print, you save things in USB sticks, you do stuff like this. Again, be aware, because now you're actually producing company documents within your home environments. You're using a printer to print all those things. Do the same thing that you do in the office. I mean, bring those practices back home. When you have sensitive documents, don't leave them around. Well, if you shred them in the office, you shred them at home as well. I mean, these are some of the key things that I think we should bring out. I think the complicated things like network segregation, having separate devices. If your company gives you a VPN, tells you these services are only available when you VPN to the company, right? Go ahead and do that, right? Because why? I think to demystify, because we use the word VPN a lot, everybody start thinking that VPN is a magic pill. VPN is very simple. I mean, VPN means that you're using somebody else's network, okay, and it forms a private network between yourselves. For your organizations, they have VPN to allow you for your home network to be part of them. That brings the risk of your home network now in the corporate environment. But we'll leave the corporates to go and manage that, and they could, right? But on your own, you need to be mindful. VPN is not meant to be the silver bullet for your home environment. You don't set subscribing to an open VPN or a VPN service that is free doesn't solve the problem. You have to ask yourself, what problem are you trying to solve there? Okay, it doesn't solve that problem. Okay, the last thing that's very important, patch all your software. Okay, with the COVID situation, actually what has happened is a lot of vendors are now becoming very aware of vulnerabilities in their system, because now more people are using it. For example, Zoom. We all know what happened in the early days. They do patch it very quickly. This is now happening, so it should form as a natural habit, okay, for people at home as well. Patch all your devices, not only those that you think you use, even those that your kids are using. Okay, make sure that they are patched. Be very proactive about it. And if you are really, really kiasu, have a list of all the digital devices at home. You can periodically go and ask your kids, show me your phone, show me that it's patched. You have not done anything. I'll give you your pocket money for the week. You can do that. The kids who are looking at this, don't blame me for that. These are some of the little things that's not expensive, not technically challenging, that you can go ahead and do, okay, at the home environment.
I agree that some of the things are really not very complicated, because one of the easiest ways that people are getting into accounts is still simple passwords. The password is password.
Right.
Right? Or if they're forced to make one difficult password, they use that same difficult password for every other account. These are habits that we can change. Use difficult passwords and use different passwords for every account.
But at home it's even stranger. You have difficult password that you don't remember, you write on a piece of paper. Don't do that.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, it would be good if everybody has moved on to the biometric authentication world, where you just need to scan your iris or thumbprint. I don't even need to remember any password, It's very difficult to remember difficult passwords, which is why, people share passwords. It's a chicken and egg situation, It's like one or the other. Which one would you rather?
Go online, there's many ways of remembering password. I can create one secure one now here. Irene, David, Ee-Chien, Benjamin, myself. All these are combination of letters already. I-C, I-D-E, B-S. It's random words, and then you can just create, you can think of imaginary pictures. I mean, there are ways of creating passwords.
Right.
It may not be difficult to memorize. Do it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's another question from a Zoom audience. Mary Lee, she asked, nowadays there are numerous QR codes for various things. How safe is it to scan such and any QR codes at all with your mobile phone camera? How easy is it for scammers to make use of QR codes to hack our mobile phones?
Yeah, I think this QR code is very interesting. I mean, QR code emerged as the way to communicate from one device to device. And you think what is the alternative? Alternative is actually use the RFID or the Bluetooth or so on. And somehow QR code emerged as the one for payment. I guess this is because it's linked to how we, in the physical security, because we are in much control, we can see that it's there and then we scan. And somehow everyone look at the code, they know that it's QR code. Okay. So if you think of that, then QR code is just a mean for someone to send a piece of information to your phone. So now we practice a typical hygiene, common sense. If someone wants to tell you something, do you want to accept that? So that piece of information is just very typically is a URL. It go pass you to a URL, or the piece of information say pay him using a pay now or whatever. So now, of course, then we practice the typical common sense. If someone show you QR code, you want to scan, and then this one is a hawker from the fish noodle, then you pay him using pay now. If you are a hawker owner, so you also have to know that this is a piece of information that I'm going to tell my customer. So I have to make sure that this piece of information is correct. Okay, there are many incidents where attacker, they actually paste their own QR code on there. So the customer actually pay to the customer. So I think this is a typical one way to think about it. Yeah.
Everyone plays a part in the chain.
Yeah. So I just said to say that there's no technical solution to stop this. Yeah, maybe later on there is a common database storing all the QR code, but it's very difficult. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One last question from our Zoom audience, Yvonne Wong. She asks, what are the dangers of streaming free movies and TV shows online?
This, I think, is a
piracy sites included.
circuit breaker, then has to stay at home to watch movie, right?
See, a lot of people had bought these Android set-top boxes, which promised them unlimited free movies just for the cost. And you see, as Stephen has said already, if something looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Yeah, we have taken all the care to have VPNs and everything secure in the house. Then you introduce a virus-catching machine into your home network and plug it in. What's the point? You have no idea who put those apps there, what those apps are actually doing while they're connected to your home network. Why would you take such a risk?
So the analogy for both the last two questions is that in the physical world, when someone tells you, please pay the hawker $3, then you ask the guy, it's like, do you work for the hawker store? Or are you just some random guy that's here and then now I pay you? So you have to exercise some due care and concern. So when you scan the QR code, you have to be careful. Similarly, when you introduce these set-top boxes or you want to access free movies, then you have to ask yourself, what else are you allowing into your house? What else are you allowing into your home network, etc.? And you're taking on some risks. In certain instances, you may be comfortable taking on that risk, but if it's going to be in your house and it's going to be connected to your home network and you're doing all kinds of other things there, then this may be something you may want to review. Right. So the technology allows us to do many things, but we need to exercise some judgment. And some of that judgment has to do with our own sense of what is appropriate.
Maybe I'll mention a bit about this free movie stuff. I mean, as I mentioned, yeah, if it's free, don't believe it. But there are certain things that potentially you have no choice, right? Which is why just now I mentioned, as David has mentioned correctly, it's about the risk that comes with it and whether you can accept the risk. So I did mention I have multiple phones. I have one phone that's called the compromise phone. That's for me to put anything that I think is going to be compromised. So that's the thing, is about your own risk appetite. Be aware of it. Yes. And then if that environment allows you, so don't introduce it to your home environment where everything is there. Yes. Correct? You know the risk. So I think the takeaway really, as what I was mentioning from front to now, is identify what is important to you. If those are important to you, protect them. Don't put them in the same place that you have free VPN, free movies. I mean, you are just asking for trouble. Commonsensically, they will tell you it's not sensible to do so. Yeah, so do all this. I mean, it's not really difficult. It's not difficult at all. It's just a lot of common sense and a lot of awareness. You have to be aware. I mean, you can't see in the digital world as you would physically, but I think as time goes on, it becomes habitual. Then you build that habit. Yeah, so it will take time, but I think we are along the right track.
Right. Thanks, Stephen. I think you've summarized it, very, very succinctly, saying, first take stock of your digital assets, and then keep it separate, and then the rest can be compromised. And these are some of the things that we can do, as we restart and reset for 2021 and beyond. Are there any last words from any of our panelists before we close the session? Did I miss anything to close?
If I may,
Sure.
I think I would end off to say that digital is here to stay. I think there's no way that we can avoid it. It offers great opportunities for us in terms of the work environment, in terms of education, in terms of entertainment, in terms of connecting with other people. We should seize these opportunities. But in order to do that, then we need to be mindful of the risks. The risks are not insurmountable. We need to manage them. But like what Stephen says, be aware of what you're putting at risk. And for certain things, the risk is too great. Then you need to protect yourselves. But it's not a lump of everything that you put together. Segregate your life, segregate the approach that you take. And then for some things, you can still maintain the access and to reap the full benefits of digitalization, which I think is essential for all of us. And I think it's essential for us to learn to operate in this new digital domain. We need to build the instincts. We need to understand how to operate securely and safely in this new environment. Thank you.
Thank you. We've come to the end of our discussion. Thank you, our audience, for attending and for listening in. We would like to thank our panelists as well who have contributed to the discussion and some useful takeaways from this discussion, and also spending time here with us. So thank you, everybody. Till we meet again.